Welcome to another episode of Talking Fast, a Gilmore Girls podcast. I'm Suzanne.
And I'm Alexis.
And we're two longtime fans of the show, and we're excited to rewatch and recap it along the way.
Welcome, everybody. Today we have Season 1, Episode 16 to recap. It's called Star-Crossed Lovers and Other Strangers. The Netflix bio for this episode is: Rory and Dean celebrate their 3-month anniversary, but things don't go as planned. Luke's ex-girlfriend, Rachel, arrives in town.
So much drama.
I know.
Not quite the same kind of drama as we had in the last episode, thankfully.
Right.
That
my prediction that this would be a really light episode was not entirely correct. It started out pretty light with a lot of festival goings on and whatnot, but we'll see. I didn't know this episode was coming down the line, and at a certain point in time in the episode, I remembered what was going to happen, so I'll flag that later on. But I was like, oh shit, it's this episode!
Yeah, I remembered that only because it reminds me of what happens next, which I hate. We'll get to that next week. I guess we should do our talking fast and get some of the main points from the episode in. Are you ready to go first?
I think I am.
Okay, and go.
It is the Founders Firelight Festival. Try saying that 3 times fast. And speaking of 3, it's also Dean and Rory's 3-month anniversary. And Rory gets out of Friday night dinner. Lorelai goes alone. She's kind of on this blind date unexpectedly with this guy Emily set her up with. So there's a lot of dating going on. Rachel, Luke's ex, is back too, speaking of dates. And there's a breakup at the end. Dean got her a car. He loves her. She says nothing. Yeah, okay.
Nice.
Spoiler alert. That was like rapid fire thoughts as they came into my mind.
Yeah. You pretty much covered a lot of it, though. It's a lot of kind of back and forth stuff.
Broad strokes. Okay, let's have you take your turn.
Okay.
On the count of 1, 2, 3, go!
So it's the Firelight Festival, and the love is in the air, and Lorelai is grumpy about it. Rachel shows up at Luke's, which kind of puts a bit more tension on Lorelai and Luke. Meanwhile, Rory and Dean are going on a date, and they talk about meatballs and stuff, and then they go to a junkyard. Dean says, "I love you," and then they break up. Also, Lorelai has to have a blind date with this guy who is terrible, and she sneaks out of the bedroom window. Sorry, I couldn't remember details.
Okay. Let's slow down and catch some of the nuance of the details that we missed.
Yes.
From the very get-go, we are introduced to another fantastic Stars Hollow festival. This one is the Founders Firelight Festival, FFF. And I actually thought this opened in a really creative way that we haven't seen before, and I don't know if we'll see it much often after, but it's having a voiceover, which, I know from Glee, but this voiceover is Miss Patty telling the story of, the first story we get a few different versions of the founding of Stars Hollow, and you just see a lot of, the whole town seems to be out and decorating for this event. It is not my Stars Hollow moment, but it easily could be.
Yeah, there's it looks kind of like a fairy tale type place, like a 6-year-old's vision of a fairy tale. It's got pink and lavender tulle everywhere and flowers all over the place. Everybody looks kind of happy and is smiling, except Lorelai, of course. But yeah, I really like this intro. I wish I had been fast enough to write down the entire story, because it was pretty interesting. I mean, pretty conventional, lovers who are separated and then find each other again. But yeah, I liked hearing Miss Patty's story.
Sounded like a plagiarized version of Romeo and Juliet, basically. Yeah. The 2 star-crossed lovers who have to escape. Their families don't want them to be together. I overheard she said their families didn't approve of the union, and just in my labor mind, I thought she was saying one of the families was like anti-union, and that's the conflict.
Oh,
and I was like, wow, that's fun. But no, just the romantic union.
That would be an interesting take.
Yeah, they run away, go to Stars Hollow, conveniently like the land where the gazebo now is, and they start a fire for some reason that Patty and Taylor fight about later on. But so that's my quick synopsis. Continue.
And apparently this is something that happens every year, although we'll never see it again. I mean, we get hints of the founder stuff again, I think, but we don't ever see the festival, which is kind of sad. I would like to see it.
Yeah, I think we get Founders Day stuff, but not this like Firelight specific with all of these stars for the very like on the nose about star-crossed lovers and a bonfire. We don't see that again. It's true.
Yeah. It felt very spring-like though, like April kind of, which brings me to my first complaint about the episode, which is
let's have it.
That this is supposedly their 3-month anniversary. And so I went and double checked some of the timelines that we have so far. Dean says that this is 3 months since her birthday when he gave her the bracelet.
Right.
Her birthday is October 8th. So technically then we are in January. I somehow don't think that's right. We also have gotten, I think, just a couple episodes in the Concert Interruptus episode. Rory said that they'd only been dating for 1 month, which I, again, was like, that's impossible. So they really need to step up their timelines. I think this is about a 6-month anniversary. Maybe 5 months, but I think probably closer to 6 months. And why couldn't they just do that? I don't understand their need to make it a 3-month anniversary when it's clearly not for anybody who's watched the show. Like, it is definitely not January.
Yeah. And to clarify, she did say 2 months when she was in Concert Interruptus. Okay. Still, though, we did flag at that time that timeline didn't add up. I thought, like, this, if she said 2 months in that episode and then he said 3 months in this one, I think that tracks. It's like they decided, halfway through they wanted a new timeline. But it just bothers me. Why not 6 months? That would make far more sense for the whole, everything that happens, the fact that they're celebrating it to the extent that they do. Of course, I'm a cold, jaded person, right? No, not really at all. But I did, at first I thought maybe I would roll my eyes at this whole 3-month anniversary, like making a big deal out of it. But then I did have to take myself back and consider how that does track as a milestone in such a young and fresh relationship like they're having. And I did find it charming, at least at the start, that Dean was so into the anniversary. He was the one who remembered it. He was the one who planned everything. I think in a lot of common narratives, it is typically the feminine person in the relationship who is in charge of the work of keeping track of important dates, planning dates, all of that kind of cognitive work that he actually took on. And it's not going to go great in the end, but at the start, I was like, I will actually appreciate his role in this so far.
Yeah, I agree. It's often shown when it's the woman or somebody reminding about anniversaries, it's also often seen as kind of nagging or something like that. So I thought, it was a good thing to have that kind of reversal. And Dean is super into it. Rory gives him a bit of a hard time for it, which I liked. They're talking about Anna Karenina already, so of course there are some jokes about throwing oneself under a train. I myself have never made it through Anna Karenina, but
I've never tried, to be honest, but I did find myself thinking she really does have him wrapped around her finger. To think that he's trying to read Russian literature for her and then struggles and then still agrees to try again because she basically just asks him nicely. I'll say what I want to about Dean, but I certainly will never say he doesn't have a lack of affection for Rory. There's so many people who would just not do that for their partner. Kind of understandably, you try once to read a book they recommend. I think that's already kind of a good thing. But he tries multiple times, and for hard literature that I don't think he's interested in.
Yeah. And judging by just where his finger was in the book in that scene, he was close to the end. I don't know. I read books that people recommend to me, but my grandma, for example, gave me Outlander last summer to read, and it's 1,000 pages long. I have not started it. It's just sitting on my bookshelf. I'm also I like some romance and stuff, but not a lot of it. I think I might like this because it's more, historical as well, and kind of fantasy and stuff, but
right.
I don't know. It's so long. So I took the book from my grandma and have been hoping that she does not bring it up again. So, yeah.
I think maybe you could watch the show rather than read the book, and then you could reference it and she wouldn't know the difference probably.
Yeah, that's
because
true.
Outlander is one book. I did read the first book and maybe even the second one, but they are so long that it takes a long time to read them, and I wanted to know basically just the plot. I just wanted to know the story because I had been watching the show, and that's a rare case of I think I'd rather just watch the show than read the book, but I haven't kept up with it because it's just going on and on and on, and there's some things in it early on that just kind of I didn't enjoy, but there were parts I definitely enjoyed. I liked the consensual sex scenes between the two main characters, but then there are other things that were not so consensual that were just not for me at this point in life when I could just watch Gilmore Girls.
Yeah.
Okay. Before we move away from this scene, I wanted to share my Stars Hollow moment.
Okay.
After Dean and Rory wrap up their discussion, the camera passes by the town troubadour.
Oh, yeah.
And this figure we actually saw for the first time last episode, and I forgot to mention it. But this is, to any fan would recognize the whole troubadour aspect of Stars Hollow. And he appears twice in this episode, often at the end of a scene as a way to transition into the next scene. So you see him playing the guitar, and then there's music playing as the background music. I don't know how to describe it, but I really like this, the way that they use the troubadour as a way to transition. It's always really nice music. It usually fits the mood, or sets a mood rather, and it's very unique to Gilmore Girls that the show uses the troubadour. I can't really say I've seen something similar necessarily, and it almost feels like he's breaking the fourth wall because he's in the show in town, but he's also playing the music that we're hearing and recognizing as background music, if that makes sense, the soundtrack to the show. And it just makes Stars Hollow feel both real and not real at the same time. It exists in this kind of interesting space that I think makes it so interesting to us too. But welcome, troubadour. We're glad to have you.
Yeah, I had also noticed him last week and then forgot to mention him. I'm glad he's here, and I think some of the episodes where he does become an actual character in the town are some of my favorite because they're all just so whimsical.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad he's here. He adds a lot to the show.
Moving forward, the next scene is a conversation between Lorelai and Rory. Rory's informing her about her 3-month anniversary, basically trying to get approval to get out of Friday night dinner. And long story short, she does remarkably get out of Friday night dinner. Emily doesn't really make a fuss about it at all. And I thought this was in sharp contrast to the birthdays episode where Emily would not let Rory out of Friday night dinner that was on her birthday for a birthday party. So either this is growth or this is Emily instantly recognizing the opportunity to set Lorelai up on a blind date. Either way, it was a funny conversation between them, and it propels us forward, Rory is free to go on her date.
Yeah, it was very suspicious. We also learn one other tidbit in this scene, which is that Lorelai, I guess, has been waiting to hear from Max Medina and hasn't heard from him. We don't really understand why she'd be waiting, but this is the first mention of him, and it kind of like starts off the whole idea of Lorelai feeling lonely at this time. And I feel like it'll set us up for some things in the next couple episodes.
Yeah. I felt suspicious of this. I don't mean to be like a paranoid reader or anything like that, but Lorelai starts by saying she's in a funk, she's in a bad mood, and doesn't know why. And Rory asks her, is it because you miss Mr. Medina, pretty much? And I was like, we haven't heard from him in so long. She was having more of like the Luke stuff. Then she was having the Christopher stuff. I just felt like there was a lot of other things we could point to and like reveal to be the real reason that she's in a funk. And I almost wondered if it's like because Rory said Max, did that put it in her head? And then when she starts to, I don't want to get too far ahead of myself, like fill in like, oh, it must be Max. That must be why I'm feeling this way. When it could be deeper issues like Christopher was back and we hooked up. I let Luke down, like so many other things. She's in business school. She's running an inn. Like, does it have to be only Max, someone we haven't heard about for so long now? Supposedly, though, I guess it's only been a month in their timeline right now.
I fully agree with that. The only thing that almost convinced me that this wasn't just a complete plot device, I mean, obviously it was, but was when she said that she had had a dream about him and he just been on her mind since, because dreams can do that. Like, if you haven't thought about somebody for a while and then you have a dream about them, all of a sudden, like, you are thinking about them all the time, even if it's just some random little thing. So I did understand that. But I still agree. I think it is like she has many reasons to feel grumpy and lonely at this time. I don't know why it needs to be Max, except for that they want to bring him back into the show. That's the only explanation.
Yeah. And speaking of Max Medina, we move to his place of work in the next scene, which is between Louise, Madeline, Rory, and Paris. They're all viewing Tristan and an unnamed brunette, who's probably a Rory replacement, making out in front of the lockers. They're commenting on it in fairly funny ways. Paris is, of course, really grumpy about this because she needs to access her locker. And this scene also has my Rory's bookshelf moment in it.
Okay.
Did you have this one?
No.
No. Okay.
That's later.
Okay. It was English, so I thought maybe, but okay. Paris is very disgruntled about this PDA display, maybe a little jealous, of course. We know she has a crush on Tristan. So once he departs, he ends the makeout and his lovely young partner walks away. I don't even know. He just says, oh, to be young and in love, basically. And Paris responds, what a shame. Elizabeth Barrett Browning wasn't here to witness this. She'd put her head through a wall. And I'm actually not familiar with Barrett Browning. And so I looked her up because I'm always liable to give my, nomination to a woman writer. So she was a English poet in the first half of the 19th century. Apparently a pretty prolific writer. Like, her output of poetry was really high, and she's known for a variety of different things. But specifically, one poem was flagged, and I thought this was perhaps a connection being made here. She's known for a sonnet called How Do I Love Thee? So if I had to suspect, I would say they read this poem in class because Mr. Medina seems to have a thing for featuring... If he features a woman, it seems like it's a poet, like Dickinson and now Barrett Browning. Well, my theory is that she read it in class. And she's making fun of him because I imagine Barrett Browning presents like a complicated view of love. And so Paris is saying like she hit her head on the wall because your love is so like surface level, or not love at all. It's just teens making out in a horny way in the school hallway. So that was my nomination, and it was fun because it involved a bit of research and thinking about why Paris would make that comment at all.
Yeah, I'm glad you took that one. I had thought about taking it, but then I realized I was thinking about something written by somebody else, by another Elizabeth with a B last name, so I did not take that one. But yeah, I like that. I also liked, at one point, Paris tells Tristan and his girlfriend, I guess, to go and spawn in front
Paramore.
of... Yeah, that's better. To go and spawn in front of somebody else's locker, and I just liked that. Because Paris obviously also wants to be that girl. The girl also tells Paris to get bangs, which I think provokes her further. Yeah. I didn't like that. I thought it was kind of just like a women against women kind of thing, where, you know, she was just being mean to Paris because she had the boy or something like that.
Yeah. I think this was one of my earlier Friday night dinner critiques about the writing of teen girls. And I think in that episode it was like lacking nuance. And I would say this has been a continued issue. Not always, but it's like there's Rory and there's Paris, and these are like the smart girls we're supposed to like root for and identify with, and they're like complicated. And then there's like everyone else. And like Madeline Louise, this unnamed person who's like applying lip gloss and giving her rude fashion advice, while like Madeline and Louise are advertising a party and how you need to dress right for it. And it's like there's no in between in this world so far from what I've seen, like, which could just use more work, because that's not the case. Like, that's not the case in the real world. And it's not like, I'm not saying you're too simple or surface level character if they like lip gloss and parties and whatnot, but that trait inherently doesn't make them simple, you know? It's like, so
it's definitely like stereotyping and reducing them to their most petty characteristic, kind of, and not giving them other depth, as you said.
Yeah, there's not a problem with having a flat or a surface character necessarily. Like, not every single character can be the protagonist or the main character, you know? But, like, to reduce them so much to one thing, and just makes them a little less interesting, I think. Like, yeah.
Especially with Madeline and Louise, who have started to kind of get some dynamics, but so far they've just played out this stereotype as far as we've seen them. But we should also keep in mind at this party that Madeline is inviting everybody to. I think it'll come up in the next episode with some drama, if I'm remembering things correctly. There's some drama.
I don't remember that at all.
That we will absolutely hate. But
oh gosh. Okay.
After this, we move back to the inn. So we're kind of getting some more of Lorelai's day on Founders Day, in her grumpiness. She goes about in her mood. Yeah, she walks in, and of course this doesn't help, but Sookie and Jackson are making out in the kitchen, and I'm just glad to see more of their nice relationship, because we haven't gotten that much. So it's just good to see that they are thriving amongst vegetables and stuff.
It made me wonder if this episode aired around February, like around Valentine's Day. It maybe didn't, but at this point I started to notice the theme of like dating, relationships, love, heartbreak. It was very all in that space. Even Michelle has a date.
Yeah, which
they're trying to heterosexualize him again.
They really are. At first I really actually thought it was him talking to his mom, because I'm pretty sure later on he does talk to his mom in a similar way. But yeah, he supposedly is flirting with a woman. I don't know why they need to do that to him. I'm going to look up really quick when this episode aired? Because I'm just curious now. Okay, this one aired on March 8th. But the one that was close to Valentine's Day, I guess the double date one was close to Valentine's Day, and Concert Interruptus was close to Valentine's Day. But
okay, that makes sense.
I guess this is around the beginning of spring fever and everything. Does that make sense?
Makes me think of that song from Bambi.
I haven't seen Bambi for so long. I don't remember the songs.
Oh, it's like spring flowers or showers.
Oh.
Everyone, all the animals are like in love.
Yeah, okay. I remember that. Yeah.
I guess I should have a more concrete way to explain my example if I bring it up.
Well, it's a childhood memory.
Yeah. Lorelai continues on her day. She leaves the inn and goes through town, eventually making her way to Luke's. But on her way, a giant paper mache star, I almost said flower, but we're all about stars this episode, falls directly in front of where she was going to be walking in a mere matter of seconds, which is a very bad omen. And the volunteer setting it up says, like, that's never happened before. So it's a very, outward, external kind of metaphor of her mood, and perhaps a sign that bad things are to come, such as Rachel, Luke's ex-girlfriend.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun.
So when she gets to Luke's, I actually have, first off, we start off with a iconic quote, which is, she asks for coffee, please, and a shot of cynicism. And I feel like that's one of Lorelai's best known quotes.
Yeah, you'll definitely find that on Etsy merch.
Yeah. And then we get a bit of Taylor and Miss Patty debating over whether, I guess Taylor thinks that the lovers built the bonfire to throw themselves into, and Patty's like, no, they built it to stay warm, of course. What's romantic about wanting to burn yourself to death?
That's the Romeo and Juliet ending, I think, Taylor's version.
Yeah, that makes sense. But my Friday night dinner nominations is actually in this scene. So Lorelai is complaining about everything, and finally Luke also, agrees with her and hates everything. But they start making a lot of these kind of jokes about bipolar, like calling Lorelai bipolar and stuff like that, and a lot of jokes about like mental illnesses. And this reminds me a lot of the episode where my Friday night dinner critique was Lorelai like taking pills just kind of willy-nilly out of Suki's pill bag. And it just kind of reminds me of, especially in this time of media, how like cavalier people were with making jokes about mental illness and stuff like that, like in such a derogatory way. It was really disappointing. And I know that they were just making these as jokes, which kind of makes it worse, because as if like you were somebody with bipolar disorder watching this, like what kind of message is that giving you? Or just any viewer, what kind of message is that giving you about people who have this disorder? It's disappointing.
Yeah. And to use it as a kind of metaphor for her just general bad mood really reduces like the actual experience that bipolar people have. And they're not the same, so to use them as a metaphor, which is saying this is the same as this, it's reducing it and like simplifying it to a level that's not true to the actual like lived experience too.
Yeah.
And it's, I think we've like, this is the third episode now. There are a couple other moments in this episode too with little lines that really like, our last two critiques have been about either fat phobia or homophobia, and now here dealing with mental illness. Maybe I just wasn't paying attention enough, but in the first half of the season, I feel like I didn't notice as many inappropriate throwaway lines that are now popping up at this time in the show, which is almost more concerning because, like, you think they're getting into their rhythm now. And I'm curious to see if we're going to have to continue tracking these things where they're just, like, part of the fabric of the show and it's like a nice sweater, but these lines are like, the tag is still on and it's scratching you and you can't completely enjoy it, you know?
Yeah, it's a great analogy. Yeah, I agree. And I kind of think that it does keep happening more because when I like think back on the show in general, especially the first maybe like 4 or 5 seasons, there are so many things that pop up like that to me. And I kind of wonder whether they like were getting more popular and felt like either they could get away with this kind of stuff. Although at this point in time, like jokes like that were completely normal. So I don't know if that's necessarily what they were thinking, but yeah, we definitely didn't see that kind of stuff in the first few episodes. We saw other problematic things in the first few episodes, but Lorelai just needs to admit what's actually...
Yeah, she does just need to admit what's going on.
Yeah.
Yes. So in addition to this line and the general discussion about how Lorelai is feeling, we have another dramatic entrance, not quite as dramatic as Christopher on the motorcycle, but still Rachel's entrance is very much like Lorelai has her back turned and has to like look around to see why Luke's face is like in complete shock. And it's Rachel, who we heard about several episodes ago. We got the sense Lorelai was already jealous of her then. It definitely comes to fruition now, especially because I think Luke has a type. I've only seen 2 cases, but, you know, they're both brunette, like, talkers, very creative, free will, free spirit kind of people. And although Rachel looks, like, kind of like Lorelai, but I think Rachel looks more like Anne Hathaway.
Oh, yeah, I could see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I strangely thought that Rachel kind of felt like, at least in this first iteration of her, like what Rory dreams of being in her career at this point. Oh yeah,
that's a good point.
Like she wants to be this investigative journalist, kind of somebody who's on the ground in different places. That seems to be what Rachel is doing, just she's a photojournalist, I think. It kind of makes it seem, just from what we're getting of Rachel here, and she is like so kind of free, it seems. It doesn't seem like this would actually suit Rory very well. But it is nonetheless what she dreams of.
Right. It's like Rory's idealized version of herself or what she thinks she wants. But then watching the revival, she's clearly no Rachel.
Yeah.
She's not successful in her work at all.
Yeah.
That's a conversation for another day.
And I feel like part of it is Rachel seems completely willing to, and she seems to thrive off of dropping everything and not thinking forward, which is something that Rory can't do. Like, she needs to have a plan. So I think that's one of their main differences. And also one of the main reasons why you see, like, the immediate clash between Rachel and Luke. Luke just can't deal with this, having, like, with somebody who has no thought of the future or reasons for what they're doing. Yeah,
she's very she has spontaneity, spontaneous. She's spontaneous. And doesn't really have roots, you know, whereas Luke is like the most grounded person. His roots probably go miles deep in Stars Hollow.
Yeah, I also, like, you really get an idea of why Luke and Lorelai would work, because you're right, like, she and Rachel are very similar, but at the same time, Lorelai is also a very roots person. Like, she has plans for her life and she doesn't want to leave Stars Hollow. So it's like the perfect kind of medium of like the fast thinking excitingness of Rachel, but the kind of homebodiness that Luke needs. So it's interesting to see with Rachel's arrival.
Agreed. Lorelai leaves kind of abruptly. She makes a comment about how she runs the inn and she put all of these coffee makers in all of the rooms and only half of them work. And it turns out when she gets home later and she's telling Rory about this, she says she's like really embarrassed and she feels like she made herself seem stupid in front of Rachel, who like I think we're led to believe has a very serious job. Like she was just doing journalism in Israel and Palestine. So Lorelai felt a little embarrassed in light of her, kind of jealousy toward Rachel. Mm-hmm. But this scene has my Lorelai's Closet nomination because as they're talking, I thought it's like the star of the episode in terms of fashion. So Rory's getting ready for her date with Dean, and she is in this dress that would you say it's like a kind of like a magenta color, like between red and pink?
Yeah, it
was a gorgeous color.
It's definitely like pink, but not the kind of like, I don't know, pastel kind of pink that you think of. It's more like
like very deep.
Yeah, like the jewel tone version of warm. Pink or something like that. Yeah, I really liked the color, especially on her.
Yeah. And it has like a higher neck that has like a fabric kind of rose flower next to it, which is just really like elegant and mature. But the dress as a whole, I think partly due to the color, is like young and fresh as well. Like it's another instance of timeless fashion, I think, with Rory.
Yeah, I really liked it, especially the halter top thing. I feel like you don't see that very much, but for some people, halter tops just look really, really good, and I felt like it looked really good on Rory. And then it also makes you kind of feel like it's spring, because she's got it's sleeveless, even though she puts on a jacket. But yeah, I liked this dress. I mean, I would never wear it, but I liked it.
I think I would wear it. Something else, this is the continuation in this conversation. Yet again, Max comes up and Lorelai admits she's missing him and that she had the dream that you mentioned earlier. Rory asks her if it was a dirty dream. And I think I would just say to Rory, don't ask questions you don't want the answer to.
Yeah, seriously.
Don't ask your mom if she had a dirty dream. I don't care how close you are.
Especially not a dirty dream about your teacher that you have to go to class with
I know.
the next day.
Yeah. And Lorelai says, when you're 21, I'll tell you the real answer. Because she says no.
So we all know the real answer.
Exactly.
They also have this meatball bit. That's all that I wrote in my notes about it, because it is just like very much a bit where they talk about it being like a lady. I mean, they're going to a fancy restaurant, so it's going to be like Lady and the Tramp and push the meatball around with their noses and stuff. So really what it leads to is Rory saying that she'll bring home a meatball for Lorelai, which is kind of a weird request, but fitting in their relationship. They are very strange. We interrupt this podcast with a message from our sponsor.
Once upon a time, two star-crossed lovers determined to be together made their way to where Stars Hollow stands today. They lit a fire to stay warm on their first night together, or something like that. While even the members of the Stars Hollow City Council themselves can't quite remember how exactly the town was founded, they do know it's important to celebrate it with the Founders Firelight Festival.
Each year, the festival features a bonfire, booths, and more stars than you can count. Everywhere you go, you're sure to cross stars. There's the natural starlight, of course, plus the shiny stars in trees, star-shaped hot dogs, and huge papier-mâché stars suspended in the sky, which we've just heard have been reported as a safety hazard, so hey, visit them while you still can before they're banned.
For listeners of Talking Fast, the Founders Firelight Festival has a special offer just for you. When you attend the festival, go up to any festival volunteer and tell them your version of the Founders' tale. How and why did the Founders arrive in Stars Hollow? What exactly was the fire used for? After debating with them for several minutes about which of you is right, you should then mention that you're a listener of Talking Fast for the special deal.
At that point, the festival volunteer will give you a coupon for a buy one, get one free deal for the infamous Founders Day Party Punch. You might remember it from previous years, or if you had one too many, maybe not. You must be 21 or older to receive this coupon, limited to 2 punches per person based on safety regulations.
On their way out, so Lorelai's heading to Friday night dinner, Rory is heading to her date. We do get a short scene with Lane. That felt a little randomly placed. We get no follow-up on this at all. Lane says she's going to the festival with an arranged date, a future chiropractor. So she says her mom is losing faith in her prospects, which I did think was funny. And that, like, so many members of his family are going to be on the date as well. So she really doesn't want to go. But that's it. That's all we get. Kind of just like, the recurring joke about Lane and her mom's matchmaking.
Yeah, and I kind of wish that we got, like, more of just Lane in general and more of an idea about why she doesn't like these people, whether it's just because they're arranged or if she really doesn't have anything in common with them or what.
Right. Are they as boring as Chase Bradford?
Yeah. Oh my God, he's terrible. But yeah, they all leave, and that's the end of the Lane conversation, sadly.
The rest of the episode are these 2 consecutive storylines about Friday night dinner versus that date. And the first thing I think to say, I alluded to it a minute ago or even earlier on, Emily has set up Lorelai on this Friday night dinner, unbeknownst to her, with someone named Chase Bradford, who looks like he could come out of like a rich people catalog. And he's so boring. So boring.
Yeah.
That's all there is to say about him.
In his introduction, interestingly enough, I have my Rory's bookshelf moment. They're talking about like where he lives, and Lorelai mentions, I think, 2 like dog statues or something out in front of his. I don't remember if they're statues or actual dogs, but
I think they're real dogs.
Yeah, at his house, and he mentions that they're called Leopold and Loeb. And I also picked this because I thought, I just was curious because I had heard those names before, but I didn't really know what they meant. So I looked it up. And Leopold and Loeb were 2 murderers of a 14-year-old in the I think it was like the 1920s or something. But here, I just want to read this sentence off from the Wikipedia, so maybe we can get an idea of why Chase would be proud of naming his dogs after these 2 murderers. So it says, they committed the murder characterized at the time as, quote, the crime of the century, end quote, as a demonstration of their ostensible intellectual superiority, which they believed enabled and entitled them to carry out a perfect crime without consequences. And I read this and I was like, this 100%, like, I understand why they picked this reference for this guy. Yes. Who's just like so pompous and so like boring and clearly sees himself as an intellectual superior. And I just like, of course he would idolize these 2 men who murdered somebody because they thought that they were smart enough to get away with it. I read through how they carried out this crime, and it's so fucking dumb. It's so stupid. And so, like, they put so much effort into it, and it obviously, they still got caught. So that's the story of Leopold and Loeb.
And to name your dogs that, I feel like implies the kind of dog they had, or even trained the dog to be. Like, were these like vicious guard dogs, to protect their beautiful mansion or something like that? Like, I feel like that would only add to the meaning that you're describing, because what a perfect allusion. That truly does add so much. I'm so glad that you looked into that.
Okay.
That's good. I mean, horrifying. I thought he had unsettling vibes to him throughout the whole thing. Like, he, at one point, he says, like, shall we? And he's holding out his hand to her, or he says, I'll be waiting.
Yeah, it's so
and
creepy.
now in that context, it's even creepier. I thought he was just like really too forward, like really trying to push their connection, and he was like way too serious about it. But now now I want to say other things about what his true intentions could be secretly.
Yeah. He's terrible. Emily is like eating it up. Well, I have a feeling that she was also bored out of her mind, but it really wants this to be a success, so she's laughing at everything he says and all this. Richard is bored and clearly just like not paying attention to what's going on. He doesn't want to be there. So for once, he and Lorelai have something in common.
I actually want to say, before we get to a good scene between Richard and Lorelai, on the point that you're making about Emily and like she's probably not interested in anything either, but she's just acting along, acting amused. I totally got that vibe too, and it started earlier on when Lorelai was, basically saying, how could you do this? You set me up. Was this your plan all along? And Emily says the phrase, it was a good opportunity. And this really had me thinking about like some of what I read and work on in terms of women and their work. And I did want to flag for a moment here, as annoying as Emily is, and if I was her daughter, I would hate to be put in this situation. I do see her very like calculating nature here, and her like skill set to like see this as an opportunity. Like what she's really doing is turning kind of like this idea of like social capital into, and then she makes it into like literal capital. So like Richard's not the only business person in the family. She also is, but like a different kind. And it's a lot of work for her to maintain their social status. Say what you want about like, do I think morally she does bad things in light of that pursuit? Yeah, definitely, in my opinion. But from just like to remove and just to like think about her work and her skills, I'm just like, damn, she's so good at what she does, even though it's like awful for Lorelai. Yeah, she's like, she's doing so much. And I think it must be so much work to act like a good hostess and laugh and like ask him questions to get him to tell another boring anecdote. Like, there's no way in hell that she's actually entertained by him, but she's entertaining. She is the host. She's gonna make it happen,
Yeah, the like conversational skills that you'd need are just something that I can only dream of, like being able to carry on a conversation with somebody that you're not interested in at all, and make them feel like they're doing a great job in the conversation. I feel like that's a big part of her skill, is like making the other person feel a certain way. And she uses that against Lorelai as well, that skill, just kind of, as an attack rather than something good. But she is very good.
She attacked her this episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, she attacked her with that line about like, it's an accomplishment that Rory at her age is in a relationship for 3 months. Or maybe it's an accomplishment for some people at any age, implying, Lorelai hasn't been settled down yet. So she can raise people up and she can cut them down just as fast.
Yeah, she is a wordsmith, which we see where Lorelai got it.
Did you want to talk a bit more about Richard and Lorelai?
Oh, yeah. So the kind of ending of Friday night dinner is Lorelai attempting to sneak out, and we haven't really gotten any like resolution or anything from last week's episode where they had that big fight. When Lorelai first shows up for dinner, he's kind of ignoring her. He keeps like telling her to be quiet and let him read, but when she's sneaking out, he catches her in it, so he opens the door and she's like halfway outside the window. And they have this kind of like unspoken, I mean, they do say some things, but I feel like their main connection is an unspoken one, kind of like when they had that moment in the hospital.
Yes, yeah.
Where Lorelai is like, please just don't make me go back in there. That guy's so boring. And they just kind of like exchange a look for a couple minutes, and Richard thinks about it, and then he yells down to Emily, like, she's not here, and Lorelai gets to sneak out. I thought it was a really good way to kind of add some closure to what they had, the fight that they'd had, because Lorelai does say at one point in her pleading for Richard to let her leave that, like, she knows she's been a disappointment, but she's an adult, she can deal with that, all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of, they kind of talk a bit more about, well, Lorelai talks a bit more about the conversation, and I feel like Richard really heard what she was saying and also kind of regretted what he had said, so this was his way of making up for it.
I really like this moment for all the things that you said, and that it kind of leaves the door open for further growth in their relationship. Like, it clearly does not seem repaired yet, but you think, like, down the line, hopefully he'll come to not view her as a disappointment, and he'll be able to communicate that to her, because that could be another reason she's in a funk this episode, besides Max Medina, the feeling that she feels like a disappointment to her father, like one of the most important relationships in her life, aside from a few others, of course. So, yeah,
that's so true. And I liked that she was just climbing out of the window, that she and Christopher just hooked up in just a week prior. At first, I even thought, because she goes into her old room, and there's a jacket on the bed, and for a moment, I thought that maybe it was Christopher's leather jacket, but it wasn't. It was just hers.
Yeah. Okay. Well, meanwhile, we have another date happening that was planned. It was not unplanned. Between Rory and Dean. Apparently, there's another nice, fancy restaurant in Stars Hollow besides Le Fleur from the last time we saw the Double Date episode. The dinner seems to be going well this time. We don't really see all of it, but apparently Dean has ordered Rory 3 different kinds of pasta because she couldn't decide. And they get dessert and soda. And I just want to, like, okay, again, like, some shit is going to go down. But, like, also, how is Dean affording all of this? I do kind of feel like he's probably taking a lot. Like, how many hours did he have to work at Ducey's, to afford this meal? And Rory's not, like, paying for anything, and she didn't plan anything. Like, doesn't seem like she got him a gift or something. I was like, is this only, like, a one-way street? Will she take the 6-month anniversary? Maybe that's not gonna happen, but
Yeah.
But,
Maybe this is an exchange for her being a housewife, a 50s housewife for him.
Good point.
The different kinds of exchanges.
How the tables have turned.
Yeah. I thought it was really, I don't know how I felt about it actually when Dean was, like, so worried about whether she liked everything. I thought it was kind of, it was cute in a way, but it would have also annoyed me so much in the moment. It's just like, just let it be. We're having a nice night. But yeah, he was, like, constantly asking her if she liked things, if she wanted more, all this kind of stuff. He was very worried about it.
Yeah. In this scene, I also had my Friday night dinner critique. Not actually with Dean, but I wanted to bring something up that we've discussed multiple times, but I think it's good to check in and remind that the problem is still there. We see their waiter approach, and it's a black guy. And I think this is the first black person that we've seen in the show that I can really remember besides Michelle in maybe the whole show so far, or if, and in terms of people of color, besides, like, Lane, Mrs. Kim, and Michelle, this is the only character. So it's just, like, their waiter is black, and there's not much black representation in Stars Hollow at all. And I think this brings up an issue not only of representation, but also of casting in general. Like, how many roles are they casting throughout a season for all the different episodes of, like, background people or side bit characters, like Chilton students, Stars Hollow community members, people at the inn, guests at the inn. And it's like, he actually has a speaking line, which is basically, like, for the meatball bit, like, here's your meatball. And it's just, like, underwhelming, to say the very least, I think. Like, I don't know what to say other than, I can't say do better because it's over. If there's another revival, do better, I guess. But this is just such a recurring issue on the show. And I know I'm not the first person to point it out, and I'm not solving it or anything, but I think it's good to like bring attention to it sporadically because it's still always there. It's always white still.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so true. She doesn't have any classmates or anything that aren't white as far as I can tell from Chilton, and there's only Michelle, and he's also like, I don't know, he's kind of in a role that's like a more palatable Black person for white people, you know. And I think that that's a problem with a lot of like predominantly white shows. Is when they do cast people of color, they put them in only certain types of roles. And yeah, right. So I definitely think that's a good critique to make of this show. And I wish that there was something that there was some indication that at some point in the series they did better, but I think if anything, it almost gets worse. Because the longer they go making these casting decisions, the more they're saying about they're saying with those casting decisions. So
right. And if they're building a sort of almost like utopia in a way, like Stars Hollow is difficult to believe it exists, and there's so many qualities about it that are so dreamy and whimsical, and like you'd love to be there. It's almost like a fantasy, but by populating it with only white people who all seem to like be of a certain class, even though it's like their race and their class is enabled to be invisible in Stars Hollow as long as they're like white, of course. They're really saying like who gets to live in that world or what that world looks like by not simply casting any other like Black or brown people, you know? Yeah. Hard to transition away from this one. But we can to another kind of oh no moment. When they leave the restaurant, they walk through the festival briefly, but Rory says that the bonfire is going to take a very long time to start. So they decide to go to his phase 2 of the evening, which is a surprise. And the minute the camera kind of like shows this like salvage yard, I had my aha moment of like, it was like, car, I love you. No response. Breakup. I was like, no, it's gonna happen.
Before we get too far into that, though, I did have my Stars Hollow moment at the little bit that they are walking through
at the festival.
And it was, we see our mayor once more making the announcements or whatever. I don't remember what his name is, but then
I think Harry.
Yes, yeah, that sounds right. But then yeah, Rory's like, this will take a while. We'll be back before they light it, and Dean is questioning what's happening. We pan back to the mayor and Taylor and Patty, and they're all freaking out because once again they've forgotten matches to light the bonfire with, and they're just realizing it now. And apparently this happens every single year. So that was my Stars Hollow moment. Only in Stars Hollow would this happen every single year.
I like that. It's his 32nd year presiding over the festival too, the mayor says, and it's probably happened every single 32 years, like you're saying.
Yeah, ridiculous.
Except for the upcoming years where we'll never see it again.
Yeah, or him, for that matter.
Yeah, or him. I think I said when we saw him the first time that we would never see him again, so I was surprised that we actually had that line of continuity here. But I'll say now on record on the mic, I do think we'll never see him again officially.
Yeah, I agree.
And you can quote me on that.
But after this moment, yeah, we do get into the salvage yard.
How do you feel about him getting her a car as this gift for their 3-month anniversary?
I think the initial, like, I'm getting you a car is ridiculous, especially for a 3-month anniversary. The fact that he's making it makes it a little bit more okay, because you kind of get the feeling that it's also a hobby for him. he's got a long
So
way
he's like
to go.
using the hobby as a labor of love.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it does, looking at the car and the condition it's in and probably how much he knows at this point about cars, I feel like it's going to take a year. So it's also kind of like a commitment in a way.
Yeah.
I'm giving you this.
It really is.
Yeah. But you'll only get it after we've dated for another year or something. I don't know if I would accept it.
Yeah. And she looks like very stunned and surprised. But she also like kisses him very enthusiastically afterward and does seem excited about it when they go to like sit in the car, because he's like, only a few parts of the car are there, but the seats are intact. So they go to sit in it. And I think I share the same general feelings about this idea of gifting a car as you like to view it. I don't know. We've just talked about ways of showing affection on this show, and it seems like this isn't along that like Emily line or Christopher last episode wanting to buy a book. Like the idea of like buying or purchasing love. Like if I provide this grand thing for you, in return, you'll provide me with this. And I think we'll see his kind of logic shortly in a moment of like, if I give you this, you have to give me this in return. And there's also that whole like year-long commitment, or who knows how long it will take him. The fact that he's going to make it, and like, I do like the idea, like he crafted her that bracelet. In a way, I see the logic behind his thinking and I appreciate it, but there's just so much other kind of ethical issues going on with this gift in general.
Yeah, it makes it so that once she has the car, even, she's like indebted to him in a way. Like they can technically break up.
Like if they break up, does he get it back?
Yeah. Or does she like just keep driving around town in the car that he made her? Yeah, there's just so many weird things that they just don't think about, obviously, as teenagers. Also, why would you?
Yeah.
I don't think Dean has a car. Why doesn't he make himself a car? He could drive her around. I don't know.
And she's like, well, buy a car. And he's like, I noticed you didn't have one. Like, lots of people don't have cars. That doesn't mean they necessarily want one either. Like, I think she's stunned by the grandiosity of this gift. But is a car really what Rory wants? I think we've seen, maybe not. I mean, I did also appreciate, he's like, you spend so much time on the bus. This will free up your time. But then he, like, says the freed up time will be for him.
Yeah.
Basically.
What if she...
And talking about Russian writers. So he keeps referencing things she likes, and I'm like confused about how to feel about it. Mostly I feel bad,
yeah. What if she likes taking the bus because it gives her a chance to read, you know? I don't know.
Yeah,
or do
maybe.
homework. But that leads us to our big moment of this episode, which is Dean at their supposed 3-month anniversary saying, Rory, I love you. And her staring at him.
She says nothing.
Flabbergasted.
Crickets.
Yeah.
And he's like, did you hear me? And she says, yes. Like, she says then she loves the car. And he's like, do you love anything else? Like, oh, this goes downhill so fast.
I know.
And actually, this might seem a bit weird, but this moment is my gazebo
mine
moment.
Too. Oh my gosh.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I thought I was being so clever.
Great minds.
Just the whole, he buys her the car. He says, I love you. She says nothing back, stares at him. It's such an iconic moment, seared in my memory. It is so awkward, but it's so dramatic. And it's so unexpected, too, for where you think their storyline is going. They seem so steady, solid. You think they're going to be dating for who knows how long. Perfect first romance. And then this comes out of nowhere, out of left field. It's suddenly like, how did you blink and you miss it? And they're broken up. And it's just so good in terms of like adding this conflict into the story in a way that was so startling to Rory and to me the first time I watched it. Why did you pick this moment?
I picked it, for all of those reasons. And also I was just so proud of Rory for not just parroting back to him what he wanted to hear, because it was very clear that's what he wanted. And she like,
yes,
she gave him explanations as to why she wasn't comfortable saying it. I thought they were very legitimate explanations. Also, I think it would be so much worse to hear an a forced I love you from somebody. Like if she's not there yet, then that's that, you know. You don't want her to just fake it. And she was saying like with her parental situation with her parents, like her mom had said I love you to her father, and look what happened with that. It makes sense that she would take it very seriously. I think Dean kind of takes that as like she's saying he's not taking it seriously, which is not the case. He just needs to understand that she's coming at it from a different position, and also you can still, like, people don't need to fall in love at the same time. Sometimes it takes a while, sometimes it's staggered, and if they still both get to the same spot, that's what matters. But whatever it is, like, you just don't want somebody to feel like they have to say something, and that's what he was doing to her, and I was just proud of her for sticking to it.
Yeah, I'm glad that you point out how well, like, Rory handles this, because I was going to just focus so much on how Dean mishandles everything. So I'm glad that we started with the positive side. And I guess I don't need to go into it too much. I mean, I'll try to put it simply. It's like he's just so bad at communication in this moment. I think he instantly, the second she doesn't return it, he feels very hurt and probably insecure. And he lashes out extremely. He's like instantly angry and rude and mean to her. He refuses to see her perspective, like you point out. Like, she very eloquently explains why this is so serious to her and where she's coming from. He does not see it. He makes a rude joke about, like, you're not going to get pregnant from saying I love you. Like, he's not trying to understand where she's coming from.
He also, like, he makes fun of her pro and con lists and, like, says, oh, you want to go back and talk to your mom about it? And this reminds me, that made me so angry, because, like, he's making fun of things that she does to make decisions, and, like, this is just how she deals with things. And it's also showing evidence that she needs time to process things before she can talk more about them. And he's noting that he's noticed this evidence, but he's going to choose specifically to ignore it in this time. And it was, like, so aggravating.
Yeah, I have two thoughts about that. The first is, like, pro-con list, talking to someone else. That's, like, healthy ways of working toward conflict resolution. And he's mocking a way that they could both, like, actually, like, her doing that would enable her to come back and have them both work together to communicate and resolve this conflict. And he should have his own ways of figuring things out, whether it's pro-con list, working on a bike and talking to Todd, like, whatever. But the second point is that do you need to go talk about this with your mom, really links back to what we discussed last episode about his comment about you only, like, have that belief because of your mom. And I think it's clearly showing, I mean, last time I was thinking more about how it reflected Dean, like, and his feelings about Lorelai, but now I'm thinking it's, like, reflecting how he views Rory as a person. And I think this is incredibly gendered to whether or not he realizes it. Like, he's saying, like, you can't make a decision as a person. You need to go talk to your mom. It's, like, very belittling and viewing her as, like, an inferior person. Like, he's manly. He could just make this decision on his own, you know, but she needs help from a parent. It's, like, such a demeaning way for him to view her in that light. It's like, yeah. So those are my two thoughts.
Yeah, this is, if people were ever wondering why we disliked Dean, I feel like this is the perfect episode for them to listen to and get our full thoughts on the issue.
We're in the thick of it.
Yeah, like, yes, they are teenagers. And so I understand that there's, like, there might not be as much thought or, like, experience in dealing with situations like this, but still, just the way that he, like, immediately lashes out at her and doesn't listen to any of her explanations. It's just unacceptable. A huge red flag, as they would say, you know.
Yes. Yeah. And to like compare it, Rory is also a teen, also in her first relationship. I think Dean, they mentioned he had a girlfriend before, so this is actually not his first relationship, whereas it is Rory's. And she's communicating in a more healthy way. And in terms of Rory, we commended her for how she dealt with that short fight with Lane earlier on in the season 2. Like, Rory in multiple relationships, platonic or romantic or whatever, has shown that she's not perfect either. She has messed up. She has not shown up perfectly. But the way that she handles it when someone brings it to her attention so far has been miles better than what Dean does in this scene, you know?
Yeah, and I'm just... This is probably unhelpful for us in the moment, but I'm just thinking forward to what happens later with this, and I'm just so angry about it.
I know. I'm going to need like some kind of coping mechanism, I think, to recap the Rory and Dean like part. Oh, is that part 3? Because I don't know, but them later on, it's the darkest of dark times.
Yeah, I know. We've got some time to figure out how we're going to
think about how we can handle it. Yeah.
Oh my God.
If it's just hating on them constantly, I don't know if that's enough, you know, because is that the energy I want to put into the world every single week? I'm not sure.
Yeah.
We'll see.
But at least we're complimenting Rory on her dealing of this now. Although I'm just realizing in the future we will not be complimenting her. But anyways, back to this moment.
We can compliment other people. Yeah. Do we have anything else to say, or should we move forward to the very last scenes of the episode?
I think we can move forward. I feel like we've drug Dean through the mud. He could use a bit more of it, but
yeah,
it's good for now.
Yeah, we'll move on. So our kind of wrapping up scene is at the festival. Lorelai has now made her way to the festival. I almost feel like we're tracking her journey throughout her day. Kind of like Ulysses or something. But anyways, Sookie and Jackson have a really nice moment. Yeah, another instance of them thriving together. I'm glad that we got to see 2 scenes with them, even if they're short, as just further evidence that their relationship at least is going well.
Yeah.
Then we get some more Rachel and Luke, and then Lorelai and Luke scenes back to back at a park bench. What is there to say about that other than like conflict? Tables have turned. Yeah. Now Luke is kind of the one not available.
They're kind of like parallel talks with Luke in the middle. Like Rachel and Luke's talk is basically about why is Rachel there? And then Rachel also asks Luke about Lorelai. Luke is kind of cagey about it. He's like, sometimes it seems like there's something there, but he's glad Rachel's there. And you can kind of see in the way that he says, I'm glad you're here, that they're going to take back up again. But then when Lorelai and Luke talk, they kind of have the same conversation, basically. Lorelai's like asking about Rachel and why Rachel is here and what's going to happen with them.
Completely. And I felt like knowing now that in that last conversation between Luke and Lorelai, he says, sometimes you just need to like jump in rather than spend time debating things, which is like such a not Luke thing to say. But Lorelai's kind of taking that in a bit pensively. And my theory, my little brain, is that when she goes to call Max when she gets home from the festival, I do think, of course, she's missing Max. They did seem to have like a really romantic connection when they were together. But I think part of this is also like bounding back from the fact that Luke is now with Rachel, is the message she got. And so he's no longer available. The table has turned. And she's like, well, you know, who is available and who liked me? Max, you know? But she gets his voicemail. I feel like we get more of Max's voicemail half the time than we do of him.
Yeah, that's true.
Anyways.
Yeah, I like that analysis. We also see in this little short scene at the Firelight Festival, we do see Lane again. She walks behind Luke with her date, and then they both are just silent and grim, and then we see a long succession of like 20 relatives passing behind them. And it looks
okay, I forgot about that. I kind of take back what I said about like how we got no follow-up to her appearance earlier. I mean, that's so brief, but at least it is like it follows up on the storyline, so I feel less harshly about her scene earlier.
But I think also they were setting something up for the next episode in that, so we'll see.
Okay. The final scene is very sweet but sad. Lorelai hangs up the phone. She looks over. Rory has come in the front door. She says, "We broke up," and she's very clearly very sad. And Lorelai just like wordlessly walks over and hugs her, and it fades to black.
Yeah.
And that is the end.
Definitely not what we would have expected. Yeah.
No. We'll get more about this.
That was I think a very interesting episode. Had a lot of different facets.
Mm-hmm. Yes. But I do think that brings us to the end. So I can remind you or announce kind of, I'm not sure if we've said this before, we are still collecting gazebo moments from the entirety of season 1. We plan to do a special episode at the end of our podcast season where we share a lot of different gazebo moments from listeners and interact with all of you and get your feedback on what you really liked from the season. And as always, you can email those to us at talkingfastpodcast@gmail.com. You can type them up or you can put them in a voice memo of no more than like a minute. And as always, as well, you can follow us on Instagram at talkingfastpodcast, where Suzanne puts out a lot of fantastic content to follow along and keep up with us. But I think that's all. So we'll talk more about this breakup next week.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Ooh. See you next week then.
Bye.